Namaste. Namaskaram. Sat Sri Akal ji. Good night. Welcome to my first film deep dive. The movie today is This is a movie that's really special for me. I had heard a lot about it, but only got down to watching it during lockdown on a friend's recommendation. Now, there are fun movies and there are good movies. This was recommended as a good movie, and with subsequent watch, the fun quotient has only gone up. The film's main character is Andrew Newman. He's an aspiring teenage jazz drummer who's in the top music school in USA. The movie starts with him practicing until Fletcher, played by the legendary JK Simmons, walks in on him and asks him to play. Also asks him why did he stop with some light mucking around. He eventually gets picked to play in his highly sought after band, and his experiences there including excruciating competition, constant emotional abuse, and crueling compositions. These components form the rest of the movie. The movie ends with Neiman finally giving the performance of his life. The movie is primarily focused on Andrew Newman, the student, and Fletcher, the mentor, caught in an abusive tornado. In the background, you have Neiman's father, his love interest, competing drummers, other band members, and some very relatable rishtedars. The story is driven forward by the two frontmen, while rest of the cast usually provides the context, sets the scene, and every now and then give us a touch of normalcy in an otherwise dysfunctional relationship. Neiman starts out as this ambitious kid with a dream, a typical nerd who's shy when talking to girls, stutters when he's talking to someone in a position of authority, and generally a pushover. Through the course of this movie, we see Neiman go through this transformation. His dream is very soon consumed by seeking validation and approval of his mentor, becoming an aggressive go-getter in his dating and musical life, an anxiety-loaded teenager, and eventually someone who just does something because he can't take the abuse anymore. In a way, Neiman turns from a nerd at the beginning of the movie to a total 100% certified mistreating everyone along the way, projecting his mentor's abuse onto others. Now, the biggest, meatiest, hardest kicking character in the movie is Fletcher. He can be found humiliating, name-calling, yelling, manipulating, and breadcrumbing other characters throughout the movie. Some verbs to describe him would be arrogant, abusive, narcissistic, egotistical, self-righteous, and of course delusional. He's not the kind of big baddie you see your usual mainstream media. He's not a murderer, he's not a gangster, he's not a criminal, not a drunkard or a junkie. He's the everyday kind of villain that we all come across in our day-to-day lives. Fletcher's character is so well built that I regard him as the protagonist of this film. With total disregard for basic human dignity and kindness, Fletcher carries this movie forward, affecting all the characters in every scene that he appears in. Now, in the background, you have Neiman's father. He is one of the only two normal characters in this entire movie. In him, you see a regular middle-aged man who's past his prime. He's a pushover who settled for the life that he's got. He also provides a brilliant contrast to his son, who's so ambitious. In the earlier part of the movie, when Neiman is moping and sulking about how he blew his chance with Fletcher in practice, the father basically says, "It's just life. When you're my age, you just get perspective." And that line it hit me in the guts because that was so relatable. And that's the kind of line you've heard from your parents and you expect it coming from your parents because of that wisdom that comes with age. But just how crisp that line was. Coming back, in Neiman's father, you see a man who cares for his son and cares deeply and only wants what's best for him while offering emotional comfort and security in the process. The other normal person in this movie is Neiman's love interest, Nicole. She's a regular teenager who works part-time at the cinemas and studies at a local college. She doesn't know what she wants from life. But you see a gentle young lady who wants to help, feels homesick every now and then, which makes her so relatable, and feels out of place every now and then. She again provides a very strong contrast to Neiman's ambitious personality, which almost makes the audience think about how she is actually a healthier human compared to Neiman. Other characters in the film to note are Ryan and and Carl, these are the two other drummers that Neiman is competing with to be in the band. They don't offer much as characters with bare minimum dialogues written for either of them. Their only job is to amplify Neiman's insecurities when it comes to being in the band and securing his place, showcasing how their ambitions are nothing compared to Neiman. I mean, you look at these characters and then you look at Neiman and then you suddenly feel that Neiman is so much more ambitious than these guys. He is so much more driven. He is absolute madness. Like, he wants this. He wants this at all costs. And in fact, Carl, the drummer that Neiman replaces in the band, so Carl is the old drummer and he's replaced by Neiman. He just has enough of it, and this guy actually just leaves the band, leaves music altogether to pursue a career in medicine. What makes this film special? Firstly, it's just the premise. Jazz as a music is from the yesteryears. It's going extinct these days, guys. Especially coming in with EDM and all kinds of electronic music and everything else that's out there, what people are listening to. There's not a lot of jazz that we get to hear. There are also a lot of movies that take on the rock music premise, and you have a lot of movies around that. You've got movies like Rock of Ages, and you've got Rock On and School of Rock, all of these movies. But you do not have a lot of movies around jazz, and that's something that really makes it special. Similarly, there are also a lot of movies that are around positive student-mentor relationships, whether that's a sport movie or just a movie around a genius. Some examples that come to mind are Good Will Hunting, Tare Zameen Par, Dead Poets Society, and Remember the Titans. But just like jazz music, this film decides to throw all the sheets and templates in the air and go for something that's really dark and uncharted to a great extent. And just like jazz music, like, this movie is just off the rails. It just does what it feels is right and it sticks to it throughout. The entire movie is a montage of deeply unsettling scenes diving into depression, anxiety, panic, abusive behavior, even suicide at one point. And there's nothing grand or exaggerated anywhere. This is the kind of movie that shows you the kind of scenes that we've either all experienced, we've all seen, or we are even currently going through in, some of our relationships. Considering the premise, the plot, and the subject, this movie is not preaching. This movie is not endorsing anything. It's an experience. It's basically a hurtful memory. It doesn't offer any resolutions. It doesn't offer any solutions. It doesn't offer you that, okay, if this is where you are, this is what you can do to get out of it. There's none of that. All that this film intends to be is cinema that is deeply felt and challenges perceptions of the audience at so many different levels. My favorite part, though, is that this movie is a dozen films merged into one. It's an experience. I've watched this movie 6 times until now, and every single time the ending has felt completely different. And this only reminds me of one other movie, which is Fight Club. So the first time I watched this movie, I was basically watching it for the story, and by the end of it, I only saw redemption where the movie ended. The next time I saw revenge. Then on my third watching, I saw that there was harmony and peace in that dysfunctional relationship. Then on the next viewing, it was sadness and grief, and no one dies in this movie. Sorry, one guy does. But that's only mentioned in the dialogues. It's in the background. No one that we know dies. No one that we've seen on the screen actually dies. So none of that. But in spite of not having a grand ending, this film does so much with an abrupt ending than most films can with an elaborate payoff. Alright guys, that's it from me. I hope you like my deep dive. Let me know your thoughts on the film, and I'll be very happy to take on your recommendations for my next deep dive. Take care and see you next time. Dot. Um,